All right. Well, I want to thank everybody for taking some time today. As the world is turning, things are changing dramatically, not only impacting our industry, but everybody in the United States is feeling some of the impact that's going on. I just want to summarize some of the things we went over in California, because Wealth and Wisdom is a growing group of professionals from across the country who are deeply concerned about the direction we're heading and the impact it's going to have on everybody's life. We went through this meeting out in California. We sat through a lot of elements where there were companies talking about products, and the industry approach to you has always been product orientated. And we look at the product orientated over my 40 years in the business almost. It's like it's all centered on math. And math, when done properly, is always correct. We can agree with that. The problem with the math is when we start using math as the center point of our discussions with a client, in a 10-year or 20-year period, the math is correct, but the elements around the math have changed dramatically, changing the outcomes in our planning aspects. So we need to have a deeper understanding of what's going on around us and in our planning efforts. It's not all about the product. It's not always all about the rate of return. It's about the elements that are going to impact these things. The challenges that many Americans are facing today are not complicated product issues. They're complicated everyday issues for them. From the pandemic, the healthcare and education, the political environment, the increasing costs of inflation, the mandates and constant state of crisis adds to their stress. And for the first time, many Americans are starting to feel that they're not in control of their outcomes in their lives. They have a gut feeling that they're not prepared financially and realize that there is really no certainty that they can rely on in their future. To master the financial solutions, we must first understand and master the challenges that will destroy the solution. So today I want to just discuss with you, summarizing some of the things we went over, and then we'll go into that case that I presented out in California. I just want to open up the conversation by saying, what do you see? More importantly, what don't you see? Now, this fits for both the representative and also the client, because what do you see and what don't you see is a conversation about most of life's accidents and unintended consequences are the results of things you don't see, not the things you do see. And the barriers in our lives and in our careers are defined by only knowing what we know and seeing only what we see. So we need to spend some time on the elements that we don't see. You see, I can't go back to day one in a client's life and start a brand new beginning, but we can start right now and change their lives to create a brand new ending. So with that, I have written letters on the site that stick out. In my marketing, I always want to make a statement, not always about the product, not about the history of the company. These are tools that we use. They're not the solution. You're the solution in the client's life. The product is simply a tool for you to use. And first of all, we have to understand it'd be more difficult to achieve future financial goals simply because of the 5 core elements we discussed in that meeting: the risk, the taxes, the regulation, inflation, and depreciation of the dollar. And when we slow the game down quite a bit, these 5 elements are the stress factors in everybody's decision-making process. To give you an example, does a qualified plan solve the client's problems of risk, taxes, regulation, inflation, and depreciation of the dollar? Or did I just describe to you what it is? Overcoming these elements is really the key to successful financial planning. And when you approach it this way, we're looking at the opportunity to make multiple sales per client, not only increasing the size of each case, but creating more sales around that family structure. The question in the core elements is very simple. Which of these 5 elements do you want in your life, Mr. and Mrs. Client? Which of these 5 elements do you control? Will these elements get better or worse for you in the future? So the question is, why is traditional thinking pointing you in a direction that you don't want and you don't control? It's a great conversation opener for a client, because you're going to separate yourself from the competition tremendously right from the very beginning. The second element that's going to be a lesson for us to understand is the basic financial formula that we discussed out in California in traditional thinking is flawed from the very beginning. And the formula is used in every of the spreadsheets, illustrations, and everything that we show the clients. This is the formula that is used. Time times rate of return times monetary unit equals accumulation. And when we understand that there's only one element in this formula that is correct, and that is time, all the other elements in there are variables. The rates of return fluctuate. As I'm sitting here talking to you today, after a 900-point increase yesterday in the stock market, we're down 1,100 points today. So we're looking at the variables that we don't control. So rates of return are all over the place. The monetary unit no longer is stable enough to really talk about 10 and 20 years out. And so the rate of return, the monetary unit, and it comes to the thing that we all look for from our companies, and that's the accumulation number. That's the number we end up selling. But the accumulation number has trouble with the 5 core elements of risk, taxes, regulation, inflation, and depreciation of dollar. So it's like a Chinese firing squad. We're running into a situation here where we have to overcome some of these challenges to get to the right solutions. The economic trends and shifts are not favorable for traditional planning right now. We're talking about the last couple of years and the next couple of years coming down the road, because the economic trends and shifts are very, very vital for the growth in our incomes. You know, we look at different elements in inflation, and the government in its wisdom uses what they call core inflation. Inflation has been changed by the government 22 times in the last 20 years, the way they measure it. And so we have to understand the core inflation is simply an average of all of the sectors together. Now, when I make a statement that a lot of times the core element leaves out different factors, it's not that they don't take those factors into consideration. It's the point that they just average it out across the board. So we're sitting at 8 to 8.5% inflation right now, even though the energy sector is up in March 32.5%. When we look at all of these elements, the element of food is up 13.5% in the last year. That's far above the 8.5%. But see, this is where people live. They live with energy, they live with food. The cost of housing has skyrocketed and now is starting to slow down because of interest rates. An interesting thing you might find, sort of quizzical is that in October of last year, a $500,000 house in the United States on a 30-year mortgage would cost a client about $2,100 a month. Come March, this past March, interest rates went up, so that $2,100 will only buy a $395,000 house now. And in April, interest rates went up another 0.5%, so that $2,100 now buys $370,000 house. And with the increase yesterday, we're looking at 6% mortgage rates, where $2,100 will buy a $355,000 house. So in 180 days, things have changed dramatically. And we have to understand the elements and the trends that are impacting clients' lives. The product hasn't changed, but the clients' lives have. Fourth, traditional planning is centered on different levels of risk and risk tolerance. I asked the question out there, whatever happened to certainty? Why can't we market to certainty? I mean, if we could have certainty in our planning efforts, we wouldn't need compliance, would we? Because it would be for certain. Well, there are elements that we can build around certainty in our lives, in our families' lives, and we need to pass that on to our clients. And finally, most of today's planning is absent of clarity, certainty, and leverage. And it seems like almost every one of these elements the average American is hoping for is not included in today's planning. We're busy trying to risk our way to success. And the problem is the industry continues to train us from the outside in. What I mean by that is, here's the product, here's all the variables in that product, here's the riders, here's how much it costs, now go sell it. I would like to approach the training aspect, and Wealth and Wisdom does this, from the inside out. Your skills And your knowledge is going to be the solution in your client's life. The product is a tool. You are not a product for the tool. The product is a tool for you to use. Although these 5 elements will seem overwhelming, they will only remain overwhelming if we continue the same planning process that collides with the challenges instead of solving them. So this is the topic is about hiddenomics and redefining the planning process and redefining your marketing approach with this type of element. What you missed out in California was the day I spoke, my newest book came out. It's called Double Jeopardy. It's a 30-minute read, very simple, and it talks about the 9 elements that can dramatically change their financial futures. You know, like Seth, the answer in this, there is no answer in this because I believe you're the answer. I believe that you guys are the answer to this. I address the problem because you don't have the time to go over all of these aspects, all of these short stories, all of these are like one page, this is 1-page read that, you know, with a setup charge, we can put your name on it if you're a member of the Institute. These are all different conversations from that book about the accident, inflation, a day in my life, the monetary unit, Washington is broken. These are discussions outside the percentages and outside the idea of let's show them the illustration first. So there are 8 different white papers that we can have as a marketing piece. And this is about 6 months of marketing to your client if you wanted to use some of these things. Now, at Wealth and Wisdom, we have 108 white papers. You're not going to use 108. The idea is when you become a member of the Institute, you and I sit down personally, privately, by Zoom or in person, and discuss the type of business you're in, the type of client you want to attract, and the conversation and the marketing pieces that will bring them to you and give them an opportunity to move forward in your life. So simply, our marketing wants to bring thought and innovation to your financial future. So we're surrounded by different elements and environments. And what we wanted to talk about today was the idea of creating an environment that will not only expand your planning, increase the size of the cases, but across the country, averaging 3.5 to 4.5 sales per client in the discussion. By expanding your planning to your current base and having different discussions, you're going to realize how important this is. Instead of trying to find a new body every, or 10 new bodies every month or so to talk to, we can start looking at your client base and really go after the idea of sharing these ideas with them. So let me go over this because in the beginning, well, that's not what I wanted to do. Let me back out of here. In the beginning, let me go down. In the beginning, I started out by utilizing this on my own family. And I realized a while back that many times we listen to financial people and we listen to what they say. They say, well, here's what you should do. You should go outside and build your retirement brick by brick over a period of 20 to 30 years. And that's fine. I'm going to tell my wife, I'm going to go outside and build my retirement a little by little over a 30-year period. Well, I listened to this guy and then I woke up at 3 a.m. thinking about it. And I said, that's totally adverse to what we do in our everyday lives. I don't go out and put 5 bricks on a house for a new house and tell my wife, hey, in 30 years, we'll have a new house, we can move in. She would not be too excited about that. I go out and buy the house I want and then pay for it. The same thing with a car. I like my cars. But I don't tell my wife in 3 years we'll need a new car and I just ordered the drivetrain. It's in the garage. The seats are coming next week and the fenders. And in 3 years, I'll assemble that and then we'll have a new car. No, I go out and buy the car I want and then pay for it. Why aren't we buying our retirement number now and then pay for it? That number will give us a certainty in our lives that we've never had before. And this discussion covers the idea about the accident. I think one of the most important conversations we had, Scott, out there in California was a little story about the accident, because I bought a new car not long ago, and it sat in my garage because I work in Florida for a month, but I sat in my garage for a month. I came back home, and the first time I really drove the car was to the grocery store the next day. Now I'm going down this 2-lane highway about 55 miles an hour, and there's a turn lane, left-hand turn lane, and cars are stacked up in it. And the second car in the turn lane decided not to turn and pulled out right in front of me at 55 miles an hour. I didn't touch them. My NASCAR skills went into action, and I swerved up over an 8-inch curb, lifting the front end of the car off the ground, sliding through a grass field between 2 utility poles, missing one by 8 inches, down an 8-inch curb, across an intersection, and sideways up an 8-inch curb, finally coming to rest and realizing that I probably broke every rim, wheel, and undercarriage that this car had. I came to my senses just long enough to see the person that caused this drive by. And I looked at the odometer, it said 28 miles. And so I started thinking about that, what happened. And the first thought that whole day was, I should have taken West Road instead of King Road to the grocery store. And then it started me thinking about, if I knew the accident was going to happen on King Road, would I have went a different way? If my clients knew there's going to be an accident in their financial life, for certain, should I tell them about it? Who should I save? You have been given a gift having this information, because they're going to suffer through their the accident they're going to be hit with is risk, the taxes, the regulations, inflation, and depreciation of the dollar that will impact every American in their financial futures. Do you have enough courage to tell them about the accident? And then do you have enough knowledge to solve this problem for them and avoid the accident? It's a great story. It's one of the white papers. It's a page and a half. Put your name on it, send it out to the client, and have a discussion about the challenges they're facing with the core elements, period. And then you can give them example. I realized how important this was several years ago. And the first clients I ever had when it came to the family legacy was my family. I sat down with them, and for the first time, I gave them a 8.5 by 11-inch piece of paper, and I told them to draw a dot in the middle of it. And I said, that dot represents my life. That's all I have. And then I told my daughters and my son to draw a line 3 inches below that dot. And I said, that line represents where I'm at in my life right now. And the distance between that line and that dot, the dot represents I have to leave. The distance between that line and that dot is time. And I just don't know how much time I have. But I know I'm going to leave. And then I started asking them some funny questions. Girls, guys, if I could tell you the 2 teams that will be playing in the Super Bowl next year, from the Word of God, He wants you to know this stuff. And if I could tell you the score of that game with certainty, He wants you to know this. And who would win? How much would you invest in that? How much would you bet on that? My oldest daughter looked at me straight in the eyes and said, Dad, why everything? And I said, that's right. I want you to bet everything that someday I have to leave. This is a certainty in my life. This is the last gift of love I can offer you. And it was the greatest sale I ever made. The next person I sat down with, we do meetings in the Detroit area here. They're economic meetings for our A and B clients, and we share information that's going on in our country right now. We're sitting here with the year-to-date Dow at almost 9% negative. And it was a good year last year, but now that good year last year isn't compounding, is it? In fact, it's losing. And the big thing is we're not losing the percentage, we're losing the time, because time compounds everything. So one of my clients heard my story about what I did for my family in one of our meetings, and he was a good client. And I just simply wanted to bring thought and innovation to his life. But the big basic principles of wealth is rich people think like rich people and poor people continue to think like poor people. There are 3 rules of the rich that you must understand. To use the least amount of money to create the most amount of wealth in the least amount of time. That's rule number 1. Rule number 2 is to guarantee that the wealth will occur and the legacy will transfer tax-free. Sound like a 401k? Rule number 3, create multiples of wealth immediately, the next day. We utilize life insurance to do this. They own a number. Listen to the words. They own a number for the first time in their lives. Do they own the number in a 401k, or does it have to go through the process of risk, taxes, regulation, inflation, depreciation of dollar to get to the real buying power number that we're looking for? So let's take a look at this. And the big secret that I need to train agents on is recognize the value inside families and in their lives that's already there, and then preserving it for the future. And once again, you're going to have to understand that ownership is everything. And the need to finish the plan is where the industry has failed. So the goal is very simple with the client. Mr. and Mrs. Client, in our very first meeting, I'm going to increase your money supply. Secondly, we're going to create more better benefits for you and your family. Number 3, we're going to reduce the element of risk that you face in the marketplace in paying future taxations. And number 4, we're going to achieve these 3 goals without you spending one more dime than you're currently spending. The concept here is to preserve the yesterdays and create new tomorrows. Here's the difference. My stuff at Wealth and Wisdom is the why they should be listening to you. You are the how they're going to solve the problem. And that's the difference. Here's the case I shared with you in California. I had a doctor say, you know what, Len, I used to look at my mom's stuff and I didn't look at, this is going back now 10 years. I didn't look at it for a couple of years, and I went over there after I heard you speak last night, and I looked at her stuff and it looks like she lost a lot of money in the market. And will you talk to her? I said, well, let's take a look at what's going on first. What do you see? What don't you see? So we have a doctor here. He's putting $40,000 a year away for his retirement. He likes life insurance. He's got $29,000 of annual premium. I managed his qualified plan back then. He had $650,000 and his retirement goal was $3 million. What do you see here? What do you see, Scott? The question is, what don't we see? When I first sat down with him, what I didn't see was his 70-year-old mother. I did all of this planning without knowing that she was even existing. And so we sold them, disability insurance. We sold them life insurance. We did all this stuff. We did the retirement planning, but what didn't we see to go forward with him? And it was his 70-year-old mother. The mother was 70 years old. She had the 1 son, 3 grandsons, and she was living on $40,000 of income a year. She had $700,000 investments. And over the past 2 years before I met her, she had lost about $220,000 in the stock market. She was still in the stock market. In fact, when they brought her papers in, they had margin accounts on her, making trades that weren't necessary. And she lived in a $250,000 home in Michigan that was totally paid for. Now, what do you see? The first discussion we're going to have with the client, Mrs. Smith, is how many opportunities have passed you by? And there may be an opportunity sitting in front of you that you don't see. And this opportunity is so critical to your financial future. I feel I have an obligation to share it with you, even if it means for you to say no to the idea. Every word I just told you, every presentation I'm showing you right now is on our site. You can have this conversation, and then the words come just as you see it in the PowerPoint here. You can read them off to the client or use it as a marking point to have the discussions. The second discussion was this. Mrs. Smith, let's take a look back in your life. Remember when you were 20 years old and you got married? What an exciting time that was. And then you had your son here. He became a doctor. And you had to set aside some of the things, the dreams, hopes, and goals in your life that you wanted to achieve. you know, and that wasn't discussed before. So we take a look at the $700,000 of investments that she had. She wasn't taking any income from it. And I simply looked at her and said, you know, we could produce on an income rider element $30,000 a year and still preserve the $700,000 for your son and your 3 grandchildren. That's called an annuity. Okay. The second step I wanted to have a discussion with her was about her home. Mrs. Smith, what are you going to do with that house that you own outright when you decide to leave the planet? And she looked at me and said, well, I'm going to give it to my son. Well, you know what he's going to do? He's going to go to ACO Hardware and buy a $28 sign that says for sale and put it on the front lawn. I see something different. Mrs. Smith, what if we looked at this situation from the family standpoint? Mrs. Smith, are you a member of a strong, loving family? Because if you are, there's a tremendous opportunity here that you don't see. Mrs. Smith, here's an idea. It's going to take 3 minutes. Doctor, stop putting the $40,000 into your retirement account on a yearly basis. Mrs. Smith, sell your son your home right now. It's $250,000. And if you put it into a 30-year program at $250,000 at 4%, we know it's higher now, it'd be $1,200 a month or $14,400 a year. Doctor, you're making that payment. You stop putting the 401k money in, and we're using $14,000 of that $30,000 that you are setting aside for retirement.
Okay.
Mrs. Smith, here's what's happening. You're going to get a tax-free check from a mortgage company. And it'd be nice if you put it into a modified endowment legacy program that would provide $700,000 when you decide to leave the planet, tax-free for your kids and your grandkids. So you're buying the mother's house. And what we did here, by doing that, we put this into universal life. Okay, because it's a flexible premium opportunity. Even though it's a modified endowment, there are, elements inside that policy where I could increase the amount of money into this, the Corridor Act, and increase the death benefit. Also, what's unique about the universal life or whatever product you're using in a universal situation, we can have a number of premium payers putting into this program, and one of them could miss an annual payment and the product continues to do its work, even though we missed one payment. So $700,000, Mrs. Smith, would move to your family tax-free in the event of you leaving the planet. Next, doctor, in 10 years of paying your house, you will have paid $144,000 in mortgage payments. The interest is tax deductible under current law. You paid $144,000, and if your mother died in the 10th year, you get $700,000 tax-free, and that's a 26.5% 10-year rate of return tax-free. And the event is certain to happen. Then the doctor started asking really stupid questions. He said, I had been putting $40,000 into my qualified plan. You told me to stop that, but I'm making $14,000 in mortgage payments on my mother's house. What should I do with the other $25,000 I was putting into my retirement? Well, if we take a look at it from a different perspective, we could say that $25,000 in a midlife legacy program or a whole life contract would create $600,000 in 19 years for your retirement. And if we keep the policy in place, the money will flow to you tax-free. Now, by keeping the policy in place, we're going to change ownership to the children, and your children will have the death benefit as a legacy for them. During this meeting, what happened was it was in less than an hour. We knew we had $650,000 in a qualified plan. The mom put $700,000 into annuity with an income rider of $30,000 a year on it if she wanted it. The mother's home that she she sold it to her son, got a check for $250,000, and that created a $700,000 death benefit on a single pay life insurance contract in a universal life setting. The doctor's legacy program was in a whole life setting. Now you can change all of these things to fit what you want to do. But in less than an hour, when the doctor had come into the office, we knew he had $650,000 in his retirement program currently. His goal at retirement was $3 million when I first met him. In 1 hour, we ended up with $2.65 million in one meeting. 2 million of it tax-free. And we didn't spend one more dime than anybody else was spending. We need to break this down and see the power behind this if we could slow the game down enough to see what's going to happen. And the question is constantly, what do you see and what don't you see? And there's always the idea of plan B, underwriting and things like that. But Mrs. Smith, the case I just showed you was an actual case. And we did it about 12 years ago. So the numbers are a little bit different than they are today. But something happened on June 13th, 2019. Mrs. Smith died. And I want to share with you what happened in the plan I just showed you. 9 years and 8 months later, after starting the program, the projected amount from the annuity, she did not use it for income. The projected amount at the beginning was $700,000. What actually ended up in that annuity over a 10-year program without taking money out was $850,000. It was $150,000 above what we projected. 9 years and 8 months later, the home that the doctor bought in the life insurance was put in place by her putting into a modified endowment. The death benefit stayed stable. 9 years and 8 months later, the home value that the doctor purchased went from $250,000, and in the actual 9 years later, the actual value of the house was $337,000 on the market, an $87,000 increase over that 10-year period. This doesn't take into consideration the taxation element, and the equity built back up in the house. He got to write off the interest on and taxes on the house, which accumulated more money, and the current balance left on the mortgage after 10 years was still $209,000, but showed an increase of $41,000 over the starting balance. The interest deduction on $139,000 of interest deductible payments was $37,200. The doctor's legacy program in a life insurance is still at $600,000 goal, okay? And what happened, we did not compound. He had $650,000 in his retirement program that we just left stagnant, but it actually earned money over that 9-year period to over $1 million. And that was $420,000 than when we started. So the final projection after her death, when we started out with a projection of $2.6 million, ended up being $3.3 million. And at 4% interest, because the doctor's only 57, 58. If we project 4% to his age 65, the total amount of our planning is $4.4 million, not 2.6. Most of it built on certainty. Now, can things change? Absolutely. Things change in life all the time. Rules and regulations change all the time. See, this is about your awareness, what we call the inside planning, your awareness of what's going on in the economy and being able to adjust to that. And then starting to take a look at putting some certainty in your client's life. So with that, are there any questions, Scott, that you may have, or discussion about some of this case? Because we're performing cases all day long on legacy. We had a gentleman speak in Savannah who, when he first met me, put a legacy case on his father. And his father died a number of years ago, and it left this gentleman's mother and him $1.3 million. This was several years ago. He bought her a penthouse in Florida on the ocean where she could live the best life she could. And today that penthouse is worth $4.5 million. All because of one simple thought. And nobody spent one more dime than they were currently spending to achieve these goals. This is the type of discussions, the type of planning that we want to discuss with you. And the products that you have at Total Financial are, well on their way of solving the problem for the client if we address the issues in the proper discussion. I always look at a client and say, it's going to be difficult getting to the right solution if we're having the wrong discussion. And the discussion isn't about the rate of return on the interest rates of the, inside the policy or the annuity or anything else. It's about what we can achieve now and owning the number. All of the aspects I just showed you, the client walked away from that meeting owning the number. The annuity number, the life insurance contract on the house, the life insurance contract on her investments. And so everything was a number certain that they could rely on into the future. I can't hear you, Scott. I can see lips moving, but.
Mute's a good thing. Hey, why don't we pause for just a second? And obviously this meeting is for the folks that are on the call. Does any one of the agents on the line have a question for Len on, some of the things that he does, this case? Because when we're done here, he's definitely going to talk about some of the things that he does provide. So I don't know, Jay, you got a question?
Yeah, of course I do. Thank you. I appreciate it. And thank you, Len. This is, obviously very intriguing to me. I've always felt this way. And what you're saying is kind of a breath of fresh air to me, knowing that someone has developed something that's been in the back of my mind for many years. And that is, the creation of wealth through, this idea of legacy planning. I guess my question, which you probably get all the time, would be, we use life insurance and to do this, and we really didn't get into the weeds about the life insurance product, the underwriting of it, the cost of it, the risks associated with life insurance carriers changing the game and pulling the rug from the, out from under of the agents and the customers because, they face uncertainty. So I guess that's kind of where I was headed.
Well, I've been doing this for about 40 years, and in my career, I've seen 2 life insurance companies take a dive. They're all self-insured against themselves when it comes to death benefit. A lot less risk than being in the marketplace. A lot less risk being, we look at real estate 10, 12 years ago when the market totally crashed. And we might be setting ourselves up for the same thing. When we look for certainty, we buy the best level of certainty that we can. And I can't say that is, we can use annuities and things like that, but there's no leverage in the annuity. Life insurance is the only thing where I can find leverage for my client to use the least amount of money to create the most amount of wealth. Now, as we move along, just recently, life insurance carriers have made significant changes in interest rates to make their product more viable and to make it more reliable and to keep pace with what's going on in our environment. But my fear about life insurance is going under. It barely exists. And it's like, I could see a lot of other things collapsing way before life insurance does. I can see, I belong to 2 economic circles who deal in advising senators and congressmen. Not that I like those people, but the stuff that they talk about in talking about a recession next year, talking about the slowdown of the marketplace, and talking about inflation. Inflation right now is the greatest fear. It's greater than taxes. We look at inflation and say the numbers out there are just dramatic. And we can see it just in the mortgage rates. Every time mortgage rates go up, you lose value in your house. What I mean by that is, in order for it to be sellable to another customer who is planning to buy a house on an amount of money that they can spend on a monthly basis, you have to lower the price of your house. And now we're seeing for people who have bought houses at, $1 million when the interest rates were 3%, 3.2%. And now the projection going out in the next 30 to 40 days is interest rates will be 6%. They just lost value in their house. And all of a sudden they're upside down. I have not seen too many life insurance contracts go upside down unless they were sold improperly.
I happen to agree with you with everything you just said, except that, when you're talking about using a certain number of premium to pay for a life insurance contract, and for whatever reason, the insurance company increases or decreases the cap on an IUL, or increases the cost of insurance in some fashion, or over projects. You can only, unless you're using some type of guaranteed contract, which I guess you could.
Bingo.
Then the only problem would be the company going out of business,
well,
but I don't see the life insurance carrier going out of business as an issue. I see.
Well, it's a good conversation from the standpoint of many times in our thought process, the way we've been trained is to look at the life insurance contract, say, look at the cash value buildup. No, I'm going to sell it for the death benefit. You can continue doing the personal planning, utilizing life insurance as a piggy bank. But we have these elements in the discussion we had out in California. Oh, this company's paying 2%. Scott, you were there, you heard it all. And he said, oh, look at our company's paying 3%. Well, our company is paying a dividend of 3.75. This is wonderful. When I got up there and I said, we're sitting in a world where 8.5% inflation is killing us, and we're talking about 2%. The cash value life insurance takes an enormous amount of time. Now, if I can create a death benefit inside a family's life in the matter of one meeting and get past underwriting in the matter of 4 or 5 weeks, and then they own the number, stop using the policies that put risk involved in it. And if they like the idea of risk, then use the product that has some risk in it. But let's not use this as a piggy bank. There's other things in their lives you can use as a piggy bank. We're looking for certainty here on the death benefit.
Appreciate it.
And you know what? I'm not measuring anybody's intelligence here. I'm just measuring the process that we've been put into by the industry, saying, well, look at our rate of return, look at the cash value. Well, that's important. But the immediate number that I can give a family is the death benefit. And if they own that number in the contract with certainty, then they can use that and go to the bank and say, I own this number. I want to leverage this for other things I want to do in my life.
Okay, so let's talk about something else. Let's talk about longevity. And,
Okay.
Obviously, the longer someone lives, the more costly this plan that we're putting together for them is.
Depends on the policy. If it's undersold, if you got a universal life chassis and it's undersold, yeah, some of these policies are going to blow up because the universal life chassis is built on, renewable term on an annual basis. That's the chassis it's on. It gets more costly as you live longer. Other products say, no, we're going through life expectancy and the death benefit is a certainty, some in whole life. Every policy I ever looked at or performed with in the universal life situation, I overfunded the heck out of it.
Right.
Many guys will overfund the premium to increase the amount they receive in commissions. And that policy will blow up. It's you know, it's a curse of the industry that happens. Because if the person lives to be in their 90s, the cost of on that 1-year term chassis in a universal life setting is very expensive. So the challenge is understanding the difference between the policies. When we're looking at IUL or universal life, ordinary universal life, or whole life, we have to take into consideration everything that we now know. And the problem I have with some of the industry too, on top of this, is that ownership is everything. Do you realize that cash value in life insurance in a nursing home for Medicare or Medicaid is not protected?
Yes, I'm very aware of it.
And so we can talk all we want about cash values and everything else, but if we didn't finish the job, we sold them a product that is exposed to loss. We must finish the plan. And
Okay,
that
so the I have another question. I'm sorry,
Sure.
I'm taking up all this
No,
time,
that's
but
fine.
very intriguing to me is that you'll, like, when you sat down with your family, you were saying, hey, look at my life and let's center around what I can give you, the love that I have for my children and my wife and my family and my grandchildren and so forth, and really starting something and getting them in a position of, so they can do, in my opinion, they can make it a better world. So I'm taking it even a step further. They have the ability to make a better world for themselves and for everyone else.
With certainty.
And that is, if I'm buying it on my life or my children's buying it on my life, then really where am I arriving? I'm just going to continue on this wheel, work very hard, and a lot of the money that I was spending and putting somewhere else that I won't have access to, really, how's my life any better? The only way that I feel that it's better is that I know that I'm leaving my children and my family in a much better position than I started, which, I see the value.
What if you didn't spend a dime to do it? Would you allow your family to do it? My case, my children paid for the whole policy. All 4 families chipped in and bought the policy. $2.5 million on my life. Now, I don't know what it's like going to bed one night and worried about your kids growing up and bills and paying houses and doing all this stuff and trying to put money away in today's economy. And the next day you wake up and saying, oh, we got $2.5 million in our future. I didn't spend a dime. It was their investment. And since it's their investment, they own it. And since they own it, it's not counted in a nursing home situation, Medicare, Medicaid, on my ownership plan. They own it. Now they can use that policy and as leverage to pay for, I've got 9 grandkids, pay for college education for some of them if they want. They can leverage it out. It's something that they own totally. The death benefit, the $2.5 million is the ideal thing. Now we sold them universal life on my age because I told them when I retire, I will also kick the premium up. I will put premium also in there as I became secure in my retirement and there's this money sitting there. Why is it just sitting there? Where am I going to take it when they put me in the coffin?
I know we've only got a couple of minutes left in our call, Len, and Jay,
Yeah.
Great questions. I appreciate the dialogue. Can you talk a little bit about wealth and wisdom and what the producers here can leverage you with and what the system looks like?
Yeah, the system, this is what you're seeing on the screen is our site itself. And everything that we had talked about today is there in discussions. we have different types of presentations. The presentation you just saw on the family legacy is on the site. So when we look at the site, there are two different types of presentations. Number one, the presentation builder has 170 slides in it where you can create your own presentation based on our discussions and our training. So we can put a presentation that we want to have with a client the next day, and we can then save it for the standpoint of saying, look, I can save this presentation on my computer, so I can just look at it and save it, for my client's presentation. But I can also save it for my review meeting with them next year. So when we look at that, it's going to be important that you understand that we have the ability to take a slide, drag it over to the presentation builder, to the stage. And on the stage is where you're going to perform for the client. So now I just put in 5 slides and they're all numbered. So if you have a question about it, our training manual that you get will go through all of these slides. You're not going to learn all this because that's why we do. Members of the Institute have my personal cell number. We get calls all the time helping people, put together presentations. This presentation I just did was simply having a discussion. If given a choice, Mr. and Mrs. Client, where do you want to start your financial planning? Do you want to put it into something that's 100% taxable, sometimes taxable, or tax-free? The problem is, why does traditional planning point you in a direction that you don't want to go?
Anything else you need?
So these are little discussions that we can have built on that presentation builder itself. Some of these slides are very important when it comes down to the presentation builder itself. When we look at going all the way down to the bottom, there was one presentation we did one slide out here on the federal government and their projections, some of the stuff that we looked at. The government here, here's what they projected 5 years ago. They took in $1.9 trillion in taxes, income taxes. Their projection through 2022 said that they would go to $2.7 trillion. Well, the reality is they're at $3.8 trillion right now. That's a 50% increase from where they were 5 years ago. Now, having this information, Scott, talking to a client, I'm going to ask the client, do you still believe it's a good idea to defer taxes to a later date? Knowing what the clients and the company and the industry's got in mind, especially the government when it comes to these type of slides. So there's the presentation builder. The second part of presentation is what I just showed you. 2 of the screens were built on the presentation itself was in PowerPoints. Now we issue a lot of PowerPoints like the one you just saw and the money matrix and all these other ones. This is a whole different segment. And we have 70 different PowerPoints. You're not going to watch 70 of them. That's why becoming a member, Chuck, we sit down with you, analyze the business you're in, analyze the type of client you're looking for, and then we match up your personality and what you want to the conversation that will attract that type of client for you. So we have dozens of PowerPoints. In fact, if you have an idea for a PowerPoint that you want to present, I'll create one for you and put your name on it. Okay, and so we might even be able to put it on our library there. But there's page after page of these type of presentations. Not that you're going to use all these, but they're available in the event that you call me and say, Len, I'm meeting with some professionals. What could I say to get their attention? So let's now look at, we're going to go back to the home page and let's take a look at some of the things that we can do. There's documents on download, on assist. We can click on that. Now, some of the most important conversations you're going to have with a client are simply, if I can get this to open up. Let me do it this way. I went to all media because all media shows everything that we have in our segment here. This webinar was controlled by Scott. If I did a webinar, I'm going to put it in the webinar library for you to review. Okay, we have audio files. We have 70 audio files that you can listen to the conversations. We have video files. The videos are really well done expect, and they're a little bit tricky. You have to click on this to get the videos. There's 13 videos friendly to your client. You're showing them a 1.5-minute video about a topic you want to discuss. When we look at some of the elements in the videos, we talk about the charitable legacy, the defining moment, the family legacy, insurance, the money matrix. And these are all professionally done videos that you can put on your site or send to a client if you like. Not only that, we have other videos of me talking to you about how to deliver some of these discussions to a client. So there's a lot of videos here that are really, really neat. You can use some for the client and some for training and listening how the conversation goes in your own setting. So we're going back to the home page, and we're going to go back into media once again, because there's a treasure trove of things that are in here. We're going to go to all media, and we talk about marketing pieces. And when we talk about marketing pieces, there are several different marketing pieces and sectors that we have. Eliminating losing financial strategies stands for ELFs. These are ELFs. These are categories that we have. And each category has an unintended consequences series. And these are a series of discussions, white papers you can share with your client. My name doesn't appear on any of this stuff. Okay? It's you we're trying to sell. They're buying you before they buy any products. When we talk about the legacy series, I'll just open up one for you. These are done well. We're going to talk about the family legacy. I just want to open it up and show you how it looks. Open it. And these are printable off of your machine. The family legacy is a conversation with a client. There's a disclaimer on there. And now remember, these are coming off of your machine. So what we tell an agent is, in between this cover and this disclaimer, you're putting your letter in there. And I will help you design the letter. We have letters on the site also. We have over 50 letters that to underwriting, to clients, to different segments of the population that you can utilize. Too many to discuss in one meeting. But you can see the family legacy. This was part of an 11-minute speech I spoke in front of the Federal Reserve of Chicago twice. They recorded it, and they put this on. We went on PBS, and we did this speech on PBS. It's 7 minutes. It's in big print. This piece comes off of your machine that you can share with a 65-year-old client. Do you see my name anywhere? No. It's not about me, folks. It's about you. So there's a series of 20 different, ELFs, eliminating losing financial strategies. I will guide you on the ones that will really jump out in your type of practice and go about it that way, so that you can, again, that comes printed right off of the machine. And so there are different series that we look at when it comes to marketing. We have so much marketing. Don't let it be a deterrent for you. We also have letters. And when we talk about letters, we're talking about introducing yourself to different elements. In Detroit here, I was known as Brother Len. We did charitable legacy things for churches. We did presentations inside the churches. The goal here is meeting other people's people. That's marketing. When I look at putting myself in a position to meet other people's people, to do a 10-minute presentation in front of a group and just let their jaws drop, I'm introducing myself to as many people as I can. Give you an example. Henry Ford Hospital here. Every year they do two meetings to try to get people to give money to the hospital. When I first met the woman that was in charge of this, I said, well, how much did you bring in last year? She said $25 million. They did two 250 person meetings a year. And I said, Mrs. Jones, I said, you probably got $25 million from the top 8% of the 250 people that you introduce yourself to. And she said, you're about right. I said, what if we targeted the 10% below that and we brought in another $10 million for your organization and it wouldn't cost you a dime. I need to speak to them on leaving the gift to the hospital. And listen to the words. I told her this. I said, because that 10% has the goodness in their heart. They want to do it, but they don't know how. Let's help them, show them how to do it. And they got, the first year we did this, we brought in an additional $8 million to the hospital. But see, my goal was to meet 250 new people. Their organization, their marketing, my conversation. And we've done those for 4 years now, met over 1,000 people, some of them the same. And so that's marketing. And when we talk about the issues about the economy and things that are going on in our lives today, anytime, if you're on that cusp and you're telling them all of these issues are going to harm them in the future, anytime they turn on the news, Chuck, they're thinking about you because you're the one that presented it. You're the one telling them how it's going to impact their lives, and then you're going to give them the solution that they're looking for. So there's a lot of elements here, and the money matrix, all of these elements that we look at in the setting is amazing, because the conversations, when we look at the money matrix, in 3 minutes, we ask the client to create the most perfect product. We ask them these 12 questions. And then when they give us their answers, we record them. It's on our software. We record each one of their answers question by question. This is just a summary chart. When we're done with asking them to create the most perfect product, this is the screen that we show them. By the way, everything that they wanted in their perfect product is in green. All the things they didn't want in their perfect product are in red. So then we show them the second screen and say, here's what you wanted in your most perfect product. Why is what you want so different than what you're doing? The secret here, Scott, is this. This is where we're finding the premium in all of these elements that they're currently doing. Well, I'm overfunding my 401k. One of my children had a 15-year mortgage. My children bought that policy on me. They own it. They own it. And we had to help them find the premium. One was overfunding their 401k. One had a 15-year mortgage. We came up with $17,000 a year years ago to create that $2.5 million for me. They own the policy. Now, I'm matching some of that as we move along in our lives. So that's just the stuff. We have 8 books. 5 of them made the publisher's bestsellers list. Okay. The Family Legacy book has sold over 700,000 copies, and it sells life insurance for you. So I think, Scott, I know I went way over my time. I apologize. So
no, this is beautiful stuff. So my question to the folks that are on the call, do you want more time with Len? If you want to learn more about his system, unmute yourself and ask me, and we can schedule one-on-one time with Len. Caitlin, I see that. So yes, Fredo and I will reach out to you and Nick, and we'll get some time scheduled with who else would like a one-on-one schedule with Len? Jay? Of
course.
And Josephine, okay.
Yeah, I think it's important to understand that I don't do all this stuff for free, Scott.
Right. Right.
Sure.
We haven't raised our price in 20 years. That's how brilliant I am. Startup price with the set is $1,500, and I might even talk, Scott and Diana, to say, look, we might be able to give you a discount on some of this, but $1,500 one time. You receive all of the software. You receive, we set up an appointment one-on-one and go over this, analyze your business. Then you receive a package in FedEx with the books, some of the important materials. And then we start you in on the webcast series that we do on a daily basis. For Scott, what I'd like to do is accelerate that for new members. Instead of doing them once a month, giving them access to me personally, and then on top of that, accelerating it to every 2 weeks, so they can really, you're going to start selling this stuff right away. These conversations are going to happen right away. because this is eye-opening to the client, and it's a game changer for the representative. So $1,500 is a typical startup. The annual renewal fee, everybody sitting down, it's $375. And then we do 2 symposiums a year. And you can come to the symposiums and meet other producers that are doing this across the country. 2 years ago, before COVID hit, we had our first quarterly meeting called the 7-Figure Club. We had 7 people in our group do $1 million of revenue in the first quarter.
In the first quarter.
The average size case across the country was, taking everybody into consideration that fills out the form, $15,000 of commission per case. The average size modified endowment is $320,000 per case. And we're averaging just a little over 4 cases per client that they used to average 1 sale per client. Because we're opening it up to the family. We're marketing to another element inside their family. Does any of this make sense?
Absolutely.
Understood. Absolutely. All right, everyone. I know we went over. I want to say thank you to everyone. Josephine, I saw your note. Thank you. If you need anything, please feel free to call myself, call your SVP if you want more details. Absolutely. So with that, Len, thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
Jay, great questions.
Thank you.
And
Thank you, Len.
we will chat later. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks,
Right.
Scott.
Thank you.
Really appreciate you guys getting this together.
Yeah, absolutely, Jay. We'll talk soon.
All right.
Bye.